In this unexpected horror movie opening, Zio-hei prepares to sneak back to the lab for a blood test while his family enjoys a picturesque camping day in. He has no idea that he might have caught Ebola and quietly spread it to his wife and kids. What a unique family gathering. Not until returning to work next day did he find the bottle Peter had him smell contained the Ebola, a risky perfumer. After learning the truth, Zio-hei broke down. If infected, his wife and kids would suffer, and his kids might pass gifts to classmates. Terrified of what might happen next, Zio-hei didn't dare think any further. Just as he thought about reporting it to his superiors, Peter sweet-talked him into silence. Peter feared reporting the truth would lead to quarantine for himself and contacts him infected. You suffer. Ultimately, Zio-hei followed Peter's advice, using lab equipment for daily blood tests as a mental boost. Meanwhile, Honbao alerted employees beforehand to prevent panic, a truly meticulous megaphone. Then, under the pretext of routine disinfection, he sent Nancy and Carter into the infected area for an exciting adventure. Subtitles: after killing the last sick monkey, it's like beating the final boss. Then Nancy drove off. To play it safe, Carter sneaked back into the throat area and discovered to his shock that the virus had already invaded. Talk about a plot twist. With over 500 monkeys, Nancy and Carter can't cope filming monkey search. Immediately reported the severity of the situation to their superiors as if they were shouting, "Help us, please." They wanted to send in a team to disinfect before anyone got infected, but the U.S. has never handled a virus outbreak like this, so they first had to prepare an emergency plan and select volunteers. It's like a live version of unconventional warfare. However, an employee cleaning the throat area suddenly fell, and Honbao and the administrator rushed over. They found an employee named Frank looking as pale as if he'd just walked out of a zombie flick. Subtitles: he began to show symptoms such as vomiting and fever. Upon receiving Honbao's call, Nancy and her group hurried to the throat area in a single-seater vehicle, and as expected, Peter's face turned deathly pale when he heard the news. Nancy ordered Honbao to quarantine the other employees and prepared to take Frank back to the lab, but then CDC Ross crashed the party. He claimed it was just ordinary flu and even took over the situation from Nancy. What a show-off flu angel. He not only dismantled the infected person's isolation hood but also planned to send them to a nearby hospital, leaving Nancy shaking her head in despair. At this very moment, Ross was completely unaware that his self-righteous decision was exposing innocent civilians to the imminent threat of Ebola. Truly the antithesis of heroism saving beauty. He didn't want to cause a panic, but the doctors and nurses there ignored the danger and stayed behind to go toe-to-toe with the. As Frank's wife made direct contact with him, images flooded Ross' mind of him and Nancy's mentor battling Ebola in Africa. In the face of an Ebola-ravaged village, Carter had urged doctors from Yunnan to come join him. He wanted the villagers to recognize the danger, but instead the village fell into unprecedented panic. From then on, Ross and Carter's philosophers drifted to opposite extremes, as Ross, having witnessed the horrors of Ebola, was more afraid of causing public panic, ending up in deeper trouble as a result. Then, Ross took Frank's blood sample from the nurse and headed off, as if he had made a momentous decision. Meanwhile, Zio-hei anxiously told Nancy about his contact with Peter and Ebola. Even though the test results were negative, the threat of Ebola felt like a ticking time bomb. Peter, who had been holed up in the lab, snuck out this morning after hearing someone had shown Ebola symptoms. What a sneaky ninja move. Upon hearing this, Nancy dropped her critique of Zio-hei and hurried along Peter's route to the bus station. Amidst the busy crowd at the station, a bad feeling swelled in her heart, certainly not a good omen. If Peter really showed up here and spread the virus, the consequences would be catastrophic. Luck was on her side as she found Peter, who looked worried, in a corner of the station. It was like a scene from a lucky drama. Although Peter had always been selfish, this time he surprisingly put on protective gloves. Talk about a stunning character development. Persuaded by Nancy, he agreed to return to the lab for self-isolation as she saw the situation worsen. Realizing the situation's severity, Nancy called an emergency meeting. At Carter's advice, she was powerless. Given the urgency, she demanded that the higher-ups lock down Hazelton Research Institute, like issuing an order from a law warrior. and she summoned military volunteers to euthanize the over 500 monkeys in the throat area. It was a drastic choice of life and death. CDC Ross once again chimed in, scolding Nancy as if to say, "How could you do this? No confirmed case yet. Why make a fuss? Surely a master of stirring trouble." In that instant, the scene plunged into chaos. It felt like a comical debate gone wild. As people voiced their opinions, the lab announced the blood test results. It was the moment of truth revealed. It confirmed Frank had Ebola, and Nancy's plan passed. What a twist. They swiftly rounded up volunteers, gave brief training, weeded out claustrophobes like a selection show. Upon rushing to Hazelton Research Institute, they found that the electrical system in the facility had malfunctioned. They could only begin disinfection and euthanasia in the dark. Damp building, it was a true challenge of ultimate life and death. This battle against Ebola is just beginning, so don't forget to subscribe.